Hi, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harping on Rugby. This is our weekly newsletter called the 80 Plus column. Our main content each week is our Wrap podcast, which has analysis of the latest match for Leinster Ireland men's team. If you check back at our feed, you'll see that we our most recent offering was a wrap for Leinster's win at Thomond Park just after Christmas. What that means is this 80 plus column is sort of a weekly newsletter for taking a quick look at the rest of the rugby world just to see what's going on. And of course, I hope you all had a safe, happy New Year's Eve and that 2025 is treating you well so far. Hangovers aren't too bad and all that. For this video, it's all about our feature known as the Front Five, which is a selection of five eye-catching, egg-chasing quotes and links from around the rugby media landscape. As you can see, I've got five headings all lined up here, ready to go. So let's crack on and start harping on this week's articles, starting with this one from Bristol Live, and it's John Evely. And the headline reads, Bristol Bears set to sign international fly half as Pat Lam looks for cover for AJ McGinty. Now, this is, of course, a story about Harry Byrne, Leinster's Harry Byrne, who is going to go on a 3-month loan to the Bristol Bears. They're in dire need of out half cover. What's interesting about this article is that it doesn't seem to mention the reason they need that out half cover. It's a particular tackle in the early stages of Leinster's win at Bristol Bears in the Champions Cup. Gary Ringrose did what he does, shot out of the line and absolutely hammered AJ McGinty in the early stages. Perfectly legal tackle. There was nothing wrong with it. And to be fair, no one has actually suggested otherwise ever. But unfortunately, no one likes to see it, but it's what they call, I suppose, a rugby incident. AJ McGinty was injured and he's out for a long spell on the sidelines, which is, of course, a big blow to Bristol, who have been doing well in the Premiership this season. So they'll kind of need him. And I think they've Max Malins as well as injured there. So they do need cover. And I think that this is the the perfect solution to that situation, especially when you look at Leinster as well, who, we talked a lot on the podcast about Leinster's out half situation and how maybe last season, maybe our policy was more a case of it was the out halves were forming an orderly queue behind Johnny Sexton. So maybe Ross Byrne was getting selected because he's next, and Harry Byrne was there too. Whereas maybe people like Kieran Frawley and Sam Prendergast maybe were more suited to the role of starting Leinster out half. And what we've seen this season is that's what's happened. And Sam is almost, Sam has started Champions Cup. Kieran Frawley, of course, has been injured, but still Sam has been getting the starts and he's playing for Ireland as well now. So that kind of leaves Ross Byrne maybe not so much because he's getting game time, but Harry Byrne is kind of in a limbo. We had another out half as well, Charlie Tector, but he's been reinvented as a center now, and he's been doing really well. He's had some injury concerns himself, but sort of Harry Byrne is kind of left out there, and it's like, question marks over what happens to him. So this is a perfect kind of solution all around. I think it suits Bristol because they do. I mean, he is I think he'd be well suited to the Premiership, his style, and it's a good move for him as well. It's a good move for Leinster because it gets one of their players kind of experience. It gets them game time. It's a good move all around. That's what these loan moves are supposed to do, and I think that this works really well. And this article. The quote I've picked from the article says that the 25-year-old could even make his debut this weekend in the Bears Gallagher Premiership clash away to Saracens on Saturday, and that would be quite a baptism, quite an introduction to life in the Premiership for Harry if he gets in. And we definitely wish him all the best, and we'll see how he gets on. Will he stay? The fans could warm to him. Of course, he's not the first Byrne we've sent to Bristol. We had Brian Byrne there. A couple of years ago, hooker, but who has since gone on to Newcastle. But listen, it's a move that looks interesting, and we hope it works out well for all involved. Okay, on to our second article, and this comes from the Irish Independent. It's from Rory O'Connor. Now, it's interesting. When I first saw this headline, I was going around doing things. I was scrolling through my phone, and I saw that this headline kind of popped up on my phone, and I read it wrong, and I kind of raged for about 5-10 minutes afterwards because I was furious. I've given out about the Independent, or maybe Rory O'Connor in particular, about sort of having a kind of an anti-Leinster slant to his headlines, maybe a bit clickbaity headlines. And I read this headline as saying Jack Nienaber's latest stroke of genius may end Andrew Porter's career. That's how I read it. And I kind of, like I said, I raged for a few minutes, saying, "Oh, for God's sake, they're misconstruing what Leinster is doing and blah blah blah." Then I had a look at it again. I was going to use it on um, this video, and I was going to rage about the language. So when I was setting it up, I looked at it again, and it actually says latest Nienaber's latest stroke of genius may extend Andrew Porter's career, which kind of is a totally different take. And of course, then I read the article, and it's not so much about Porter himself. It's more about, or from my interest in it, is more about Nienaber and what he's brought to Leinster. Now, of course, what he means in the article is this notion of how, like at Munster on just after Christmas at Thomond Park, Jack Boyle started the game as our loose head prop. Porter was on the bench, but after 20 minutes, Porter came on, and Jack Boyle didn't. There didn't seem to be an HIA. There didn't seem to be an injury. Jack Boyle went straight to the bench. Apparently, this was a planned move, and it's a way to manage Andrew Porter's minutes. And it's kind of it's a classic Nienaber kind of thing, and what I call thinking outside the box, BOKS. From Nienaber, because he comes up with these innovative ideas like the 7-1 split bench and things like that. And when you look at Nienaber's CV, you can't point to anywhere but the World Cup, where the Springboks won not one, not two, but 3 knockout games of rugby by 1 point. I mean, once could be a fluke. Twice maybe, but 3 times no. 3 times means that you've kind of given your team the little bit of extra edge it takes to win these kinds of games. And they were different kinds of games as well. The first one was against the host nation France, where South Africa were underdogs. The second one was against England, where South Africa were heavily favored, but England came to play. But South Africa still held out. They still finished at 1 point ahead. And of course, the final was against their old friends, the All Blacks, and they managed it then as well. So this is the kind of things that Nienaber is bringing to Leinster. These little, when he came to Leinster, we were 1 point the other side. We were getting to these finals, and we were losing by 2, 3. And then, of course, last season, where we actually drew the final and just couldn't last in extra time. So someone like Nienaber is perfect just to give you these little tweaks, these little edgy, innovative changes. And rugby is a sport where people don't usually try a lot of innovation. So it's good to see Nienaber trying things, and this is a good example. We've talked about Porter; he's put in a lot of 80-minute shifts, and that's going to take its toll, no matter how superhuman you might be. And starting for Leinster every match, you just assume he'd be one of the first names on your team sheet. But this is a slightly different look on it. If you got someone like Jack Boyle or Michael Milne, or someone who can, or Cian Healy even, who can come on and start the game for you, get the first couple of strums, get 20 minutes in, and then you got Porter coming on for the last 60 minutes, and he's there at the crucial end, and he's not coming to an end of an 80-minute shift when you're in those crucial final minutes, when you're trying to hold on to a 1 point lead or trying to get ahead by 1 point. You've got someone like Porter, like much fitter and able to play. It's actually not a bad idea. I like other things he's done for Leinster. I think he's brought this kind of, we talk about Leinster giving away a lot more penalties this season. I think that's part of its influence as well. He's getting us to take more risks. I think we do well with 14 men. We saw that against Munster. We've seen that in other games as well. We've scored a lot of points with 14 men. I think they train a lot, 14 against 15. which means that you can afford to take those risks where getting a yellow card isn't necessarily the end of the world. So it's interesting to see that the kind of innovations he's brought in, and that's basically what this article is about. It's not what I was raging about at first. O'Connor does write some articles about Leinster, and I do rage on them, but this wasn't one of them. So fair play, and it's an interesting read. Okay, third article is from Rugby Dump. And the headline reads, Stu Lancaster, I was disappointed by the lies told about me. Now, this is actually about, from my reading, it is an article about Lancaster, but for me, it's about the Munster coaching job. If you look back on our YouTube feed, you see our a video where we give our final thoughts on Munster v Leinster. Myself, Connor, and Kieran, we have a little chat about the talk about the differences between the provinces, but we focus on Munster and what their needs are. One of the things are they do need, I think, anyway, and we kind of agreed that they do need to appoint a coach sooner rather than later. And in the news over the past while, Stu Lancaster was linked with the job, but supposedly because things maybe weren't going so well at Racing. And I think it came to a head when Andy Good on his podcast speculated that he was linked with the job with Munster. And then, of course, there was things online. I noticed when there was a quote online linking him to Munster, one of the replies was actually from his wife, Nina, who actually said that it's all rubbish, basically. And this is Stu Lancaster in another radio interview saying it as well. And the quote we've chosen is, "We live in a world full of false information. It is a responsibility to check it. It is definitely a responsibility to check it, especially if you're on a podcast. You don't just go out saying it. I mean, what we do here is it's opinion, and I don't want to say, I don't want to say something just for the sake of an exclusive, for the sake of some hits, for the sake of some clicks. It's not worth it. What I want to give this is fan opinion. The Harping on Rugby is for the opinion of mostly Leinster fans, but we do try to listen to fans from all over. And saying, "Oh, I heard Stu Lancaster's going to Munster," that's not an opinion. That's just gossip. And it's important to draw the line between the two, and it's good that he's been able to come out and say it. Now, on the separate issue, I do think Munster do need to appoint someone sooner rather than later. If Lancaster's not available or Felix Jones isn't available, I think it's best for their long-term prospects this season, because they're not out of it this season. They can still get into the top 8. They can still get into the final 16 in the Champions Cup. There's still opportunities for them. But I think that the overall message coming from their coaches box will be affected if there's an actual permanent decision made soon. And there are names out there. There are people out there who have said they're willing to take the job. So I think they should make that. But that's, they probably won't listen to me. But that's just my opinion there. But anyway, listen, it's also, we also want to see more honesty from the independent podcasts as well over rumors they've heard and whatever. It's just not it's not helping. That's the point there. Okay, article number 4 comes from the World Rugby official site. Of course, they have a new chief this year, Brett Robinson. He was just elected this year, so this is kind of it's his 2025 address is what they're calling it. So I suppose what I've called it is it's like his State of the Union, State of the Rugby Union address. And so it's going to be key because it's his first. And so it's an interesting read. As often with these kind of articles and statements, it's not what they say, it's what they don't say. But the quote I've chosen is, he's talking about the obviously this is a year for the Women's Rugby World Cup, but he's going beyond that as well. He's making a big deal of the fact that not only is the 2027 World Cup in Australia, the men's, but the 2029 one, the women's, is also in Australia, and that's a new feature. And then it's going to be the same for the USA. 2031 World Cup is going to be the USA, and then the women's 2033 also in the USA. That is good. I guess I suppose it kind of keeps the focus of rugby within, and there are two markets that kind of need it for different reasons. Australia definitely need it because they're facing pressure from other sports, and USA obviously is a market we would like to crack. So that does make sense, and that's the focus. But the quote I've chosen is by embracing change, focusing on innovation, we can navigate these challenges while strengthening our core and setting our member unions and regions up for success. Now, my only concern with that is that my concern for rugby's future is our association with countries like Qatar and the UAE and places like that who are definitely looking to break into sports like rugby. And rugby, we love to say we're different to football, but I think that's different when it comes to the Blazers. They tend to almost parrot and copy what football does in many aspects of of sport. And we've just heard that football has announced that the next World Cup, or the World Cup after next, is going to go to Saudi Arabia after all the controversy and all the issues that were brought up when they had it in Qatar. So I'm just worried that rugby's going to go down that road. He doesn't say it in this State of the Union address, but when he talks about embracing change and focusing on innovation, having a World Cup in Qatar could be called innovation. It could be called change. So we need to be wary of that, and that's my concern going forward for the game of rugby. Obviously, we can talk all day about changes they can make in the laws, and there's this new rugby global calendar which is supposed to be coming out. Which is interesting, he doesn't actually mention in this statement at all. So there's that as well. But we talk about that as well. But my principal concern is, like, to what role does the investment of CVC into the game, the heavy investment of the CVC into the game, and what they want back from the game in return, where is that going to lead the game in the future? And I we'll have to keep an eye on that. So that's that article there. You can see that the link there is on the screen, the QR code. Okay, finally, one more article to go, and it's I come up with little headings for all these articles. I try to maybe do a clever pun or something. I did Pret a Porter for one of them, but this one, it's just Stephen Jones, and I think most Irish rugby fans, although of course there's another Stephen Jones who's great I have for Wales, but I think when an Irish rugby fan hears Stephen Jones, our first reaction is, well, what's he written now? Okay, this is an article from balls.ie. It's Rory Cassidy, and the headline reads, Stephen Jones said Lions game in Dublin devalues the tour. So he's not exactly a fan of Irish rugby. He's always talking about he's always talking down Irish rugby players. He's blocking Irish rugby fans on social media. So when you see this headline, so we have a feature called Clickbait of the Week. So I suppose if I was to award one, this would be it, because and when an Irish fan on balls.ie sees that headline, Stephen Jones says Lions game in Dublin devalues the tour, we'll assume he's saying that because it's in Dublin. So we'll click the link, and that's what would be interesting there. But just to be fair to him, the quote I've chosen is saying that does no one remember the dullard fixture at Murrayfield before the previous tour, which cost the Lions their captain? So he has pointed to these pre-travel games before in other places. So it's not just about matches in Dublin. So it's a bit disingenuous suggesting that with the headline, but still, it's an interesting point. Do they need this game before they travel? And I think they do. I mean, it's not just because it's in Dublin. I think wherever it is, they played in Hong Kong before in early matches and tours, and it's just another game to get the team together. If you're a coach and you're putting together a team, especially this team, which is kind of it's kind of an all-star selection from four nations. You want them playing together. You want them playing rugby. So I don't see what the problem is. If Argentina are willing to come over and play a game in Dublin, I would like to see the possibility of the Lions maybe traveling to Argentina, and I think Stephen says that as well in the article. But I don't see anything wrong with that at all. I mean, if you talk about devaluing the tour, I don't think the Lions tour needs a match in Dublin to devalue it. We've, every 4 years now, the Lions comes up and more people join this narrative saying, do we really need this tour? Do we, should we be having more actual tests? Does this take from the rest of the world, developing the game in the rest of the world? By having this tour, and is there an appetite for it? I mean, a lot of people say this tour, the Australia, like I said, Australia needs the World Cup because the game of rugby isn't doing great there at the moment. Does that mean, is that a reason for going ahead with this Lions tour? Now, on the other hand, I think that the appointment of Joe Schmidt might have saved the relevance of this tour. I think that he can get them playing in such a way that it could make it a competitive series. So it'd be interesting to see. And of course, now January the 1st, 2025, the tour is in June. We're now going to start talking about our teams. We're all starting to have our mindset. Oh, who do we think is going to be the team? Andy Farrell's going to be coaching. Is he going to have a lot of Ireland players? How is the Six Nations going to affect that? Is Ireland going to play as well as the Six Nations, or maybe other players can come to the fore? Who's going to be captain? Is it going to be Maro Itoje, who, he might be the only name from the last series, him and Ty Furlong from the last series that could make the starting 15. So who's going to be the captain? Lots of questions there. A lot of people think it should be probably Caleb Doris. So there's a lot of issues to talk about. We'll be dealing with that a lot over the coming weeks and months as well. But I think this article was interesting, that in the way they framed what Stephen Jones said. So that's that. Okay, listen, that's enough. That completes this week's Front Five. Remember, we do a lot of other regular features on our 80 Plus column. You'll get all those Front Five links, of course, on that column. Plus, we have a Leinster injury update. I pick a possible 23, Leinster 23 for our trip to La Rochelle. You've got our Troll Patrol feature where we pick out someone who's been a bit naughty online. And then, of course, there's updates on all the other major rugby tournaments. You can get it all by heading to our website at harpinonrugby.blog. Now, next up here at Harpin Manor, well, there's no Leinster Ireland match this weekend, so we're going to take a wee break. Our next planned content will actually be our next 80 Plus column, which should post on January the 8th. So please be sure to subscribe to our channel as well as our other social media platforms. You'll find those at linktree/harpinonrugby. Until next time, Happy New Year again, and stay safe, everyone. Slán.